is a pretty big commitment, no doubt, by Alcatel-Lucent, I think, in a sense, to Intel architecture. And Renee, I apologize, but you know, there is a competitor called ARM, right? And so I'd like to understand from maybe Michel and Renee, you can throw some in there, but you know, in an NFV world, again, ARM's making a lot of noise about getting in there on the server side and challenging the Intel architecture. So, Michel, maybe for you, is this an exclusive type relationship, or would you work with ARM servers as well as you go further down the road? And then maybe Renee, you know, fix me here. You know, where is it that exactly?
You want me to go first, in fact?
Feel free.
Okay. Yeah, go first.
Yeah, I'm going to go first. It's like French TV. I'm going to go first.
Good.
So, Mark knows as well. You know, it is very difficult, as you know, to manage virtual workloads in a dynamic environment. That performance requirement of that and the programming, you know, environment is pretty complicated. So, as you know, we've worked on virtualization for the better part of the last decade in the data center and in the cloud. And the scale of performance across multi-core and the ability to program and use all those cores as you migrate workloads is very unique to architecture. We have extensions in our architecture, multiple generations of which that actually offload the performance and improve the performance of virtualization. So, and it does actually require 64-bit. So here's my answer. Someday, everybody can do anything. For a long time, I'm pretty sure that we'll be the leaders in this. Okay.
So now my answer.
Your answer.
I hope it's consistent. No, I'm joking. No, I think that, let's say, in this type of stuff, the industry is moving extremely fast. So what we are trying to do is really to align with the leaders. And for me and for my colleagues, it was obvious that the Intel architecture is ahead. So which means that, let's say, we wanted to work with Intel in order to move as quickly as possible in this space and to embrace. And I guess that there is always, let's say, some price to be the first mover. Does it mean that in the world in which we do operate, that we can be in exclusive deals? I don't believe so, because it doesn't make any sense. We are there in order to drive the industry, and just to make sure that at the end of the day, what, let's say, Renee is expecting and what I am expecting is a fast migration to, let's say, this type of network function virtualization. We believe that by aligning the two of us, Intel, which is obviously a very strong company in that space, Alcatel-Lucent, which is a kind of new challenger, but really which has been leading the way in that space since quite a while, because that's not the first day that we speak about it. By aligning together, we'll have this first mover advantage, and then, let's say probably the others will follow. Great, fine. And we'll continue to be at the forefront and to innovate ahead of the others.
Here, I think there was a question in the front row here.
Yeah, I'm Alan Buggy, editor of Global Intelligence Business. You've outlined for Alcatel-Lucent what your priorities are going to be. What are you cutting out? You left out of the package that you inherited a year ago.
What is left out? So a lot. I mean, let's say, I'm not sure to understand exactly.
What you've moving?
What have we? Let's say, what did we move out of? I guess that what we are doing is, first we exited from some specific segments. Let's take an example. Application enablement, which was, let's say, a big development that we have done in the past few years, and it appeared that, let's say, it was not relevant for our customers. We spent a lot of resources as well in mobile advertising platforms, for example, which was something which at one stage was big, and it appears that we were not relevant in that space neither. So we have made a full assessment of the portfolio of where we stand, and we decided that when we were not relevant, meaning not a front runner in that space, not having the right resources, or just because the customers were not expecting us to be in that space, we decided to move out. So that's one piece. The second piece is really to accelerate the transition from the legacy world to the new world. That doesn't mean that, of course, we are not going to continue to support our customers. Take wireless. What I'm telling you is that we are embracing big time the new technology, 4G and these new architecture. But of course, we have customers which are still 2G and 3G with us. So we'll continue to support the customers in those type of technologies. But what we are doing is that we are reallocating our resources on what we believe will be the driver of the future. So there are two types of trade-offs that we have done. Either just stop a few things because it was clearly not in the core of what we wanted to do, and or accelerating the transition of our resources from legacy technologies to the new ones, while we, of course, ensure the maintenance and, let's say, the evolution of, let's say, the existing products, because we have customers, and we are very proud to have customers, which have also to orchestrate their own transition. They are not going to embrace new technologies in one day. So they have, let's say, to migrate their networks let's say, in the next few years, and we want to be their partner to orchestrate this transition. But just to give you an example, when I joined, I guess that 65% of my R&D was focused on the domains that I had just mentioned to you, meaning IP, cloud, and ultra broadband. This year in 2013, 73% of my R&D was already focused on those, let's say, domains. And by 2015, which is the end of the shift plan, my aim is to have 90% of my R&D resources focused on, let's say, what I highlighted.
Akshay first and then.
Hi, this is Akshay Sharma from Gartner. This might be a question for Lindsay as well as Renee and Michel. To virtualize things like IMS or CDN, which is already a software-based module, to put on hypervisors is pretty understandable to then go to x86 architectures. However, there are some competitors that also have baked in Xeon processors into a terabit router. Let's say, Cisco took the CRS-10, made the NCS with Xeon processors. Does that mean the 7950 or the 7750 is going to have, let's say, Intel inside?
I defer that question to the next panel, actually, and keep the higher level questions for Renee and Michel. So, but we will address that on the next panel. Sorry, question there first, and then back here.
Thanks, it's Gary.
He doesn't want me to answer about technology, but let's say, I will still be part for the next panel. Don't worry.
Thanks, it's Gareth Jenkins from UBS. A couple if I could. I guess related maybe to the last question, but more simplistically, I think historically Timetra and Nuage have worked on their own silicon designs, and I just wondered how much customization from Intel is there for specifically for Alcatel-Lucent and going forward. So how tight is this partnership in terms of design? And then secondly, I just wondered if you could give us a sense of the size and scale. You've talked about employees moving into Nuage. I just wondered if you could give us the size and scope of the kind of SDN business that you're putting together here. Thank you.
So maybe I start, and I'm sure that Renee will add. I guess that the idea when we migrate to Intel architecture, it's not to customize Intel architecture to Alcatel-Lucent, because that would not make any sense. I mean, it's to leverage in a better way the toolkits which goes with the Intel architecture, and just to make sure that we optimize the way we leverage Intel architecture in order to, let's say, improve the efficiencies of the applications that we are migrating in this environment. So that's what it is about. And of course, by putting people coming from Intel on one side and Alcatel-Lucent on the other side, that allows, let's say, to do that in a better way. And again, that's a kind of first mover advantage. Because if we are the first to think about it, to work around our own applications, and to be able to port and to leverage all the specificities of the Intel architecture in order to improve the efficiencies of our applications, that will be a good outcome for Alcatel-Lucent and for Intel. That doesn't mean, and what I have said is that not all the functions can be virtualized. So there was also these questions around our routers, for example, where you have high throughput packet processing, which will, at least for quite a long time in front of us, will still require dedicated processors, and that's really what Timetra is about and what we are working on. So I guess that We have to be very clear on, let's say, what we are trying to achieve, and there are functions which are good candidates to migrate in that space. There are some others due to, let's say, what is required or requested in terms of volume, in terms of, let's say, speed, in terms of information to be processed, which will require to remain on dedicated processors. And I am very proud of what Timetra has done and continue to do. So that's, let's say, for your first question. Second question, as far as Nuage is concerned, of course it's early days because we, as I told you, we launched Nuage the 1st of April, so which means just a few months ago. So we see already a good traction from different type of customers, meaning web-scale players, meaning large tech enterprise, and we start also to see service providers. So the first customers were, let's say, when I am speaking about large tech enterprise or web-scale players, it was more for the first reason that I mentioned, which was, let's say, to transform data centers in multi-service, multi-users type of data centers. And so that's where this, let's say, new capability kicks in. For service providers, the story is slightly different because they want to leverage SDN in order to interconnect the network and the data center to be able to deliver end-to-end services to their customers. Think about VPNs, for example. And so they will, let's say, will move to a software-defined VPN, where today it takes ages in order to be able, let's say, to deliver for a customer a VPN. So with, let's say, this SDN capability, which bridge network and data center, we can do that in a much more flexible manner and guarantee an end-to-end quality of service to the customers. So that's really going to change big time the way service providers can address the enterprise market, and that's what we are starting to do with some of them. So I see a huge potential for SDN. Again, we have to be very cautious, we have to be very careful when we speak about SDN in order to really clearly identify the real cases that we are trying to address. So that's why I gave you those two examples. Yeah, maybe.
So we have time. I'm cognizant of the time, and Renee has other appointments to go to. We have time for one more question before Renee has to leave. So
one for Renee.
Please make sure that make sure if you've got your hand raised that the question is relevant to Intel and Renee as well. We on our next panel we do have one of Renee's execs on the panel as well, so we can go into more detail. But just one more question while Renee's here. Thank you.
Kulbinder from Credit Suisse. Question for both of you, kind of building on the last one. It's more to do with timeframes and this move towards SDN or NFV, how long it might take. The reason why I ask is that some of the tech enterprises, I can see why they can afford to do this and why they need to do it. When we speak to many of the customers that should be doing this, despite all of the potential disruptive pricing gives them on networking, despite all of the benefits it gives them on network visibility, there's a reluctance to want to do it. There's a significant inertia in the changing networking over time. So I'm curious how you are deploying resources today. Is this a 5-year transition? Is it a 15-year transition? And you mentioned a few proof points there, but like, in order for this to become a revenue generator, let's say for Alcatel-Lucent, can you give us like, I'm not asking for a number, when do you think it might actually start showing up in numbers?
Renee first? No, so of course, all those transitions takes always a bit of time. I guess that what is important is the portfolio that we have announced is now up and running, and so we have already trials which are underway and even commercial deals which have been secured with some customers. I guess that it will really become mainstream when you are speaking about virtual IMS, virtual EPC, probably by 2015. I would say that for virtual RAN, maybe it will take a little bit more time because that's, let's say, something which has to be, you have to re-engineer a bit the network. You're right to say that from an operator point of view, and I have been, let's say, in this work for quite a while, it's also necessitates, or let's say, necessitates changing their OSS provisioning system. So which means that it touches also the IT of the operators. And so which means that it's something which is always heavy lift to be done. So that's why we are starting to work with them. You will also see us make announcements in the next coming months around what we will do in the OSS area, because again, I wish us to project Alcatel-Lucent in what I would say I would qualify OSS 2.0, which is what OSS means in this new world of NFV. So that will be a journey which will be progressive and which will take a few years, but you can believe that mainstream IMS and EPC starting 2015. On your other questions in terms of monetization, I guess of course it's more a question for operators, but think about virtual EPC, or maybe or virtual EMS. I mean that you will be able to slice those type of functions and then to deliver those, let's say, specific functions to your own customers. Let's take an enterprise. Today they can have their own PBX. With virtual IMS, you can provide kind of a virtual PBX from the network. And so that's something that you will be able to monetize vis-a-vis your customer. So that's where, let's say, the operators have to think about how they are going to monetize those new virtual instances. Or what I have told you earlier on, which is you can add in a very flexible manner capacity for peak periods. And so maybe they can monetize it. I mean, if you have someone who just has an event to be, let's say, for a week or for a day and requires additional capacity, with this virtual EPC, you can deliver additional capacity just for the event, and you can maybe have the organizer of this event, let's say, just pay for this extra capacity, which will provide a much better experience for its customers. So that's just a few examples. That's now up to the service providers to think about how they will leverage that in order to monetize it. The name of the game for the operators is to be in a position to monetize their network differentiation. And that's the way they will recover the ability to invest in networks and to deliver the best experience to their customers. Renee.
I would say, you know, usually I'm the one who ties so much. It's very interesting. I would say that most...
Next time I will go your show.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll speak French. Most of these technology transitions take about a decade. I mean, if you go and look at them in all sorts of, you know, I've looked at a whole bunch of different segments, they're all really about the same. So we're, you know, I don't think that this is 15 more years. I think this is a 5-year window. So, you know, Michel did not answer your question about when you're going to see this in his P&L, but I'm not going to force him to do that. Just acknowledge that. But what, you know, we're several years in already. So now we're hitting the midpoint, which is where people actually deploy and start to spend real money. So I think you should think about it as in technology terms, as relatively near in. And as Michel said, 15 for some functions is, you know, now. For all intents and purposes, for deployment purposes. So we look at it that way. We think that based on the trials and the work that we've been doing for so long, that we're, you know, to the point now for production and just going through the way we go.
All right, thank you very much, and congratulations to Renee for having the last word.